All right, it is official. Softball season's here when this guest is on. That means softball season's definitely now here. And I speak of course, ESPN analyst, former Texas A&M All-American great, Hall of Famer at Texas A&M, Amanda Scarborough with us on In the Circle, a tradition unlike any other. How you doing?
I am doing great, and I love this tradition because when we talk in February, it means that softball season is like coming up really soon. So I'm pumped.
It is exciting. Always excited to have you on the talk season preview. Although it's and I really appreciate you taking the time because you don't have an off season anymore. I used to get you on in the summer when it was a little slower, right before the Little League World Series, because we figured that's a little slower. Then that picked up for your career, and then now you're being super busy with your pitching angel. I want to talk about that first because this has been a big transcending year. I feel like because you've been doing online courses, but now you're even doing them. Had a big event recently in person. So tell the audience what you've been up to. The quote unquote off season, because for others it's off season, but not for you.
Yeah, in the off season, and really throughout the entire year during the college softball season, I have an entire business that I run called Pitching Angel, where I have online training for pitchers and also for coaches too. And so I've had that since COVID in 2020 because that's what I spent my time doing was making things online for pitchers and coaches and anybody involved in pitching to be able to learn from and benefit from to help their pitchers and their teams. So that's kind of been my focus always in the background is running that business. But as you mentioned, I had my first 3-day in-person event. I never had anything like this before. All my pitching clinics had ever they were like 90 minutes or 60 minutes or maybe 2 hours. So I put together a 3-day event in Dallas. Pitchers from 35 different states flew in for it, not just Texas, but 35 different states, 3 countries because of the United States, Canada, and then we had a pitcher from Mexico. We had somebody from Hawaii. So there were about 70 pitchers there. I had about 20 coaches that were there helping me. Current, some of them were current pitchers, some were former pitchers, just got done a couple of years ago. So it went tremendous. The impact was incredible for the parents and for the pitchers. And it was like a dream come true and everything that I wanted. And I just can't wait to do it again. So I was excited to do something in person because of all my online stuff. So it was a lot of fun. It was awesome. And of course, Jen Schroeder with her catching retreat is what really inspired me to feel like I could do it. So a lot of credit to Jen and what she's done with her catchers to make me feel like, hey, I can do that too for pitchers and make something really special for them. And it went great.
I think Kat Osterman has been involved too, speaking to them as well as part of that, right?
Yeah, Kat came in for a night and was quote unquote like the keynote speaker, and so we got a little room at the hotel that everybody was staying at, like a ballroom type thing. And she came in and spoke, and she spoke for a solid 45 minutes about every single part of her career. So it was so cool to learn more about Kat and the lessons and just every that she's learned along the way and everything that she's been through, which of course has been at every single level of our sport of softball. So of course she has a lot to share with all the girls. It was really neat.
And you give courses to the parents too, because you've said they're a coach in hiding, and
Yeah.
and you've been on in the past. You've talked about your relationship with your family, and as you were doing pitching and stuff. What is that like? What the advice you give to the parents as far as teaching them too, and giving them some lessons and ideas as far as how to handle their daughter?
It's so important. First of all, Eric, it just is incredibly important to me to be able to reach out and talk to the parents of pitchers because they're just such a big form of support for a pitcher along the way. And I mean, you're in the same house together, you're practicing the most together, you're going to lessons in the car together. So the amount of conversations and communication and support that takes place between a parent's pitcher and a parent is just huge. And you want to make those moments positive and to feel like you're fulfilling your pitcher and everything that she ever needs mentally and physically. But it's funny that you called it a coach in hiding. Usually I say they're a coach in disguise, but I kind of like a coach in hiding because a lot of them are kind of hiding, thinking, oh, I didn't never play softball or I never played baseball or I didn't play sports. And it's like, that doesn't matter. I have a way to teach them and help them communicate and work with their pitcher that it doesn't matter what their background is. I know that I can help them if they're just willing to learn and willing to start and willing to open the conversation that they can be an even bigger part in their pitcher's life. And I love that.
What's the most popular question you will get from a student when you anytime that you're doing the online course and when you did them in person? What's the most popular common question you get?
The most popular by far is how can I gain more speed? I mean, over and over and over and over again, that question is asked. And then, secondly, and it kind of plays along the same lines of what should come first, accuracy or speed? That one gets asked a lot too. And then, third, how can I help my daughter feel more confident, be more confident? And that's not a direct message answer, email like that. I mean, I do write them back always, but it's not something that can be fixed with just one drill or one saying or quote or try this. And of course, I give them things to try, but confidence really comes from just a span of moments and throughout your entire life, you know? So it's just trying to rebuild that and create new habits and routines and ways of thinking that again is just so much more than me just writing back one message or writing one email back. It takes a lot. And that's why I'm so passionate about pitching because there's a lot that goes into it in order to help make that pitcher feel her most confident.
Is that feedback too something that may help you as far as your commentary? Is that something you think about like, hey, I get asked about this a lot. Maybe I should bring this up during a broadcast because I get asked about this all the time. So you can kind of deliver a message through your analysis.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really cool actually how all my jobs work together because it's like before every tournament or series or one off game, we get a chance to sit down and talk to the coaches. And we're learning about their teams and their players and their stories and their culture, right? From every single different program, a coach is going to have a different way of talking about it and sharing information with us. And so, we, as a coach, perspective when I'm listening to it. Of course, I'm listening to it as an analyst too, but as a coach, I get to take it all in and think about, oh, cool, I can't wait to share that with my pitchers or share that with my social media following. And, I'm not saying, Beth Tarina, told me this is what she does for her curveball and it's the key. And I'm not supposed to tell anybody, but I'm going to share you. Like, I don't do it like that. Right. But I just learn what are the trends? What are they doing? What can I tell people to try? What are they working on? And be able to share that information to help grow the sport, to help grow pitchers. In a way that, if I wasn't involved like this, I don't know if I'd be able to get the same amount of information from both sides as an ESPN broadcaster and then as a coach. So I certainly use those questions that I get in the broadcast and start to think about like if there's a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old watching, like what can we teach them in these moments about playing the game, about developing, about confidence, all of that, and trying to bring it full circle, bring everything all together from all the different avenues in my life and all the thinking that's going on in my brain, which can sometimes be just a big jumble of mess. And I have to think about how I want to structure my thoughts like right now. So here we go.
Well, it's been working for you. I mean, you won the award for Extra Innings gave out the award for best national analyst. You won that award, so congrats on that.
Thank
So
you.
it's working for you.
Eric, I will say I love calling games. You've known this about me since, you first heard me call a game, which was, over 10 years ago
Yeah.
now. And I just love doing it. I still have such a big passion for it simply because I just love the sport. I love talking about the players and what they're going through and relaying that to the viewer and being able to tell their story through the game, teach the game as we're on TV. I mean, there's just so many cool things I love about being an analyst. And I just feel so lucky to get to do it. Like, I think it's still the coolest job ever. It was my dream to do something like this. And so every time I'm calling a game, I truly feel like I'm living out my dream. And I try to make the most out of it for every game, every inning, every time I get a chance to do it.
How are you a different analyst today than you were, say, 6 years ago, 7 years ago?
Ooh, probably I've learned to talk less and make what I say be more powerful in those moments, or at least that's always what I want to do because I don't know, I like to use more words and probably I need to even in a conversation like this. Probably too, I like to write. I don't know. So in writing, you can use a few more words, but anyway, I think just being more efficient and just picking my moments to tell those stories, to make a point, knowing what to expand on, what probably just doesn't need to really be expanded on, and think about it from a viewer because I think about when I'm watching games, football, basketball, baseball, softball. Like, what do I want to hear? What do I like to hear? What does the moment feel like and bring that a viewer would want to hear in the perspective and that particular moment of I don't know, the different angle that you can talk about.
No doubt. You write a lot. Tell the audience where they can find more info about Pitching Angel, because you do also do a lot of posts, write a lot of kind of
Oh, all the
inspirational
time.
things. So tell the audience where they can find more info, and especially if they want to get involved in future courses you'll be releasing.
Yeah, on Facebook, you can just search my name, Amanda Scarborough, Pitching Angel, and my page will come up. On Instagram at Pitching Angel. And then I have a website, pitching-angel.com and amanda-scarborough.com. I just, if you search my name, there's going to be good information, blogs, videos. There's going to be something that comes up that you can learn from. But for sure, you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram, the two big ones, and TikTok too. Not gonna lie, I have a little TikTok going on. Even though I don't really want to, I didn't want to get into it because, it's just one more thing to deal with, but I'm on there too.
How are pitchers now different than when you were a pitcher and you were kind of, because you obviously cover a lot of pitchers now. So, and I'm assuming this also helps you kind of stay familiar with what the pitcher of today is doing instead of worrying about, well, I would have done it back in, whenever. How are pitchers today different than they were? Are they different than they were when you were being raised and you were pitching at A&M?
I think that there's so much specialization in a sport and in a position going on. And there wasn't that as much when I was growing up, simply because I think the recruiting was just not on steroids like the way that it is now. There are so many more serious games and tournaments that they're playing year round now, serious camps and clinics to perform at. The recruiting game for high school softball players is just a completely different ball game than what it was when I was playing. So I just feel like that idea of specialization and preparing for getting to high school and getting recruited, then that makes middle school and elementary school just feel so much more serious for a pitcher and for their parents. If they're in fifth grade and they're like, we got to work to get recruited. And it's like, okay, let's just slow down. So definitely that specialization. And then, I think in general, this is, man, I could do a whole 2 hours on this, but I just don't think that pitchers are being developed as well. And I think it has to do with, again, this could be a whole tangent on the side, but how quickly they have to move back to 40 feet and how fast they have to go from an 11-inch ball to a 12-inch ball. So, put simply, I think that we've probably talked about that before, and I'm very, very passionate about it because I feel like it's affecting the confidence and development of younger pitchers with how far back they have to move at certain developmental ages. It's just too much for them. And they're all different shapes and sizes and hand sizes and strengths. And I think a lot of pitchers give up or don't build the confidence that they should or used to. And so it affects them later on, I think, in their career too. But again, that could be an entire tangent like of its own
Got
some
it.
other
I'm
time.
I'm writing this down. Future podcast.
Yeah.
Scarborough Rant.
Yeah.
There we
I
go.
would just love for them, and like my bottom line, I would love for them to not have to back up to 40 feet so quickly and go back to 40 feet from 12U and go to a bigger ball. It's a lot for a younger pitcher to take on and years at 9, 10, 11 years old when she's just starting or just learning and figuring out her body. It's just a lot. And I think it hurts them mentally and physically in the long run.
Plus, I've heard too they don't throw complete games anymore like they used to, right? Like you
That's a
used to
good
throw
point.
multiple games a day, right? That was routine. Now they're not, and I've heard from coaches the big challenge is getting them strength to go up there to be able to complete a game and maybe come in relief. Now it's almost a challenge when they first get to campus.
And again, it goes back to the development, right? I
Yeah.
think that hitters are developing at a faster pace with technology and just the coaching that, I mean, our sport has grown so fast. And I don't think that our pitchers have caught up with their development the way that the hitters have. And all the while going back to 35, 40 feet, 43 feet in the development there. But you're right. I mean, it's much less common for a pitcher to be able to go a full game than you're hearing time like on repeat over and over again when you talk to these college coaches is, oh, we're going to pitch by committee, oh, we're going to pitch by committee, and you just didn't used to hear that, and now
No.
it's so commonplace of like, okay, starter, reliever, closer, like that's the new thing, that's the new jam.
It's become the baseball there. You're right. I've heard a lot of that. One team that seems to not have any issues developing players is Norman there, Oklahoma, the two-time defending national champions. They got some good arms. Jordy Ball back, added Alex Duraco, the Michigan transfer. Kirsten Deal, the number one recruit, lefty pitcher. I guess the first question I'll ask you about him: who can challenge Oklahoma? Because last year when we got to Oklahoma City, it kind of felt anticlimactic at times, pretty much that Oklahoma was going to win this. Do you feel there are challengers this year that can derail Oklahoma here? They're going to be the favorites going in, but what's your thoughts on going into the season? Who could challenge Oklahoma is going to be the big question, I think, this year.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I think that Oklahoma can challenge Oklahoma because of the fact that they have so many new faces. You have to build a new culture. Everybody has their own way of doing things, from Arizona State coming in to Michigan to Texas A&M. Like, now you have different players all in one team and they're all stars. They're like the Yankees. So it's like, again, we're just hypothetically speaking, right? But it's like, how does this team full of stars and literally all Americans at every position who will also be on the bench, how do they handle that? Do they thrive? Are they the most dominant team like we think that they're going to be? Like, we can project that they might hit better, they might pitch better, they might defend better because of the talent that they have on their team. But I don't know, like, that could be a question mark, right? Is, do they perform to this expectation and level that we're putting on them? So first and foremost, I think that Oklahoma can be Oklahoma's biggest challenger. But then I have to go to UCLA. I mean, usually UCLA is not a team that brings in a ton of recruits, but I think on paper, when you're just reading articles and hearing about UCLA is like, okay, if Oklahoma is going to go and get all those players, we need to figure out a way to keep up with them. And so UCLA went out and got a bunch of talented marquee players to fill in all the players that graduated from them last year that had so much experience. So UCLA to me is a team that can contend because they have it in the circle and they have so much talent at every position, and they're UCLA. They carry a little chip on their shoulder. They have the history. They want to be able to go out and beat anybody at any given time because they do have all that history. But Oklahoma is like this 2000s UCLA type team, right? Like the new UCLA. And so I'm sure that kind of makes some competitive vibes there. And then finally, I think Oklahoma State, they're always in the mix now because of Kenny Gajewski and the way that he's taken over that program. And they've just grown and grown and grown and been so consistent. We're used to seeing them at the Women's College World Series and the semifinals, knocking on the door to play for a national championship. So they're definitely still in the mix. And then I think Florida State too. I mean, obviously Florida State had an early exit last year, but with Lonnie Alameda coaching you and their coaching staff, like, I truly believe that they can beat anybody. And when you have Kat Sandercock and that great coaching staff and Lonnie Alameda calling pitches and experience at the Women's College World Series, playing a team like Oklahoma, playing at the Women's College World Series, like, that goes a long way. So my challenge to Oklahoma would be UCLA, Oklahoma State, and Florida State.
I agree. I mean, Oklahoma State, that Bedlam rivalry has become huge nationally. Like, it's become one of the marquee matchups all year, which is going to be interesting. What happens to that matchup once Oklahoma goes to the SEC in the future? Who knows what that means? Because that's become, I mean, that was it did big numbers last year, obviously, on the Throwdown Thursday and that weekend. This year it's going to be at Stillwater. Could be the last time they're there. I mean, that's going to be a raucous deal. And you're right. They have what a lot of people think. I don't know how you feel. A lot of people in the sport think Kelly Maxwell's the best pitcher coming into the season in college softball. Do you feel like that's a fair assessment there? And they've added Lexi Kilfoyle from Alabama with their offense. What's your thoughts on on Oklahoma State there? You mentioned it. They could challenge Oklahoma in the Big 12.
Yeah, I think it's no secret. I love watching Kelly Maxwell pitch. Like, I for sure think that she's one of the top pitchers, if not the top pitcher, in the game right now because she has that experience. She's a redshirt junior, but really, like, she had the COVID year and a redshirt year, so she's older. She has that little bit of extra age behind her now that she'll be a redshirt junior, and we'll feel like she's really old next year when she's a redshirt senior. But I love her. I love her mechanics. I love her presence. I love how she just plays pretty consistent. She's just very even keel. She spins the ball. She can change speeds. Like, I'm a big Kelly Maxwell fan. And I think that Lexi Kilfoyle coming over from Alabama will complement her really well because she has that nasty drop ball. And of course, Kelly is more up in the zone. So that's going to be a handful for people. And again, Oklahoma State, who loves to get transfers, whereas UCLA, we're not used to them having as much. Oklahoma State, we've come to know that they're just continually going to have good transfers come to their program. And they got not only Lexi Kilfoyle, but Ivy Rosenberry, too, from Virginia Tech, who we didn't get to see a lot, but I think she has a lot of potential and a lot of talent to add that, to make that pitching staff even deeper.
Yeah, Coach Gasky told me on the show he thinks this is the best pitching staff he's had since he's been there, which is kind of pretty bold statement considering what he's had built there the last few years from a pitching staff standpoint. So that's a big strong point there. And then Texas had that incredible run last year to the tournament. They lose a lot. They lose Haley Docini. They lose Iacopo. They lose Jefferson. They're talented but young. Do you feel like this is kind of a young team that maybe is a year away? Can they be in that mix with Oklahoma State and Oklahoma?
Yeah, I think that they can, because talk about playing with a chip on your shoulder. That's how Texas plays all the time, because everybody continually underestimates them, and they feel that. They see that in the rankings, or whether it's the top 25 preseason rankings or the conference preseason votes when the coaches vote and they're not at the top. Like, Texas is the school that every year thinks that they should be at the top no matter how good Oklahoma is. And so no matter if it's top 25 or whatever it is, like they play like, hey, we're feeling a little disrespected here. And I think that experience that they had of on the road in Seattle for the Washington Regional, on the road in Fayetteville, beating Arkansas in Super Regionals. All those players, Dulcini and Jefferson and Iacopo aren't going to be on the field anymore, but all the rest of those players gain that confidence and that experience that they're going to be able to bring into this year. And Mac Morgan transferred from Arizona State. That's a really big get for Texas to be able to potentially try to replace Haley Dulcini. And I love the way that Mia Scott plays for them. She is an electric player to me. And I think that she doesn't get talked about a lot because she is in the Big 12 behind Oklahoma and Oklahoma State players, but I love the way that Mia Scott plays. And I like the way that Sophia Simpson pitches in the circle for them. I think that she really rose up last year and we learned a lot about her. She really stepped up behind Dulcini when Texas needed her and got some valuable innings. I love her changeup too. She's fiery, Sophia Simpson is in the circle. She's a good leader for them when she's out there.
One of the things we've done over the last handful of years when we've said who's the best player in college softball, usually Rachel Garcia or Jocelyn Allo's name has popped up. It's pretty easy, pretty simple. Well, they both have graduated, both have moved on and left their great legacies. Rachel a couple years ago, and then Jocelyn after last year. So I feel like for the first time in a while, I think this is a legitimate question, which is who's the best college softball player in the country going in?
I think it's got to be Tiare Jennings. I think that she's been overshadowed for the past couple of years behind Jocelyn Allo. But I think she's just electric. I think that Tiare Jennings is someone who's so special, hits for power, a pure hitter. I love the way that she plays defense. Like, she just seems like such a good leader and like the type of kid that you would want to coach every day at practice and show up on game day and get to watch thrive. She's a gamer. So I think of Tiare Jennings. And then this might be one from that you might not be thinking about in this conversation. I don't know, maybe you are, but I think Charlotte Eccles is somebody that has the ability to be a top player in the country. She had a little bit of a down year for Florida last year, but like, I love to watch her play. And I think that last year was so uncharacteristic for her. And Tim Walton will still say she contributed, she did X, Y, and Z. But I think just from a media standpoint and like big numbers and ability to potentially be a national player of the year or be SEC player of the year, Charlotte Eccles is always going to be in that conversation. And she has the ability to like really step up big for Florida this year and turn some heads and hit home runs, hit for average, play a solid defense. Like, I love watching her playing. We can't forget about her and how good she is.
Yeah, she's a great player. Her and Skylar Wallace, who Tim Walton
Mm.
raves about, still
Oh,
thinks
yeah.
she should have been a. Skylar Wallace had over 70 hits, 70 runs scored last year, 50 runs batted in, 50 steals. First player to know, and he's still upset. If you bring it up, he's still upset that she was voted second team All American. He thought she should have been first team. But that's a Florida team that made it to the World Series and is the SEC preseason favorite. But I feel like the SEC this year is as wide open as it's ever been, and maybe the most wide open conference when we're talking about the Power Five. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree. And I think of the SEC and I'm excited to watch these games because I don't know, for some reason, maybe it's just the way that I feel. The past couple of years, I've just felt like the SEC is a little down. I put that in quotes. It's just to me how it has felt. But I look at Florida, Arkansas, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Tennessee, Auburn, and I'm like, man, the SEC could really be up for grabs because I think that it was young for a while, or it felt young. But now, I think that teams like Auburn and Georgia and a great Mississippi State team that had a tremendous season last year are really rounding out the SEC. And so, yeah, I don't. I know that 3 different teams got votes in the preseason poll. That was, Florida, Arkansas,
Tennessee.
and Tennessee. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that the Tennessee or the SEC is really up for grabs. It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I can't wait. This is gonna be good. I'm, like, looking at the teams right now that I just have their team name written down, being like, "These are gonna be some good games."
Who do you have a sleeper? Because you've been dead on over the last few years in the SEC. You said Missouri, it was a sleeper year or two, and they've made noise. Arkansas a couple years back before they went on this SEC title run that they have. You mentioned them. Who do you have targeted, kind of circled this year that you think this team could take that next leap and really make some noise, whether it be winning the SEC or making a deep run in May?
I have 2. So I just mentioned them, but I think it's Georgia and Auburn. Really like Georgia and just the swag that they always play with, but now it's like bringing in Shelby Walters to me was a game changer for Georgia because we've from Duke, Shelby Walters from Duke. We've always known that Georgia can hit, and they still have Tony Baldwin. And even though he's not the assistant coach, now he's the head coach. We got to see what that was like last year, and we still know that Georgia can hit the ball. I like the fact too. I thought that JT D'Amico was a great hire for Georgia. Georgia's never been known for their defense, but I saw it take a step forward last year under his tutelage, and I continue to think that they'll take those steps forward on defense, which is major for them. But I think that Georgia was young last year and just talented, and with Shelby Walters entering it and Dallas Goodnight giving them a different look on their offense, adding some speed. That's huge. And then Auburn, I think, has one of the best 1-2 punches in the circle when Shelby Lowe is not injured or whenever she is healthy, I should say. Maddie Penta, Shelby Lowe, lefty, righty power pitcher. Shelby Lowe has that spin. Like, I love that 1-2 punch. And talk about young. They were young last year and took those offensive strides. Don't forget about what Auburn did, even though they didn't make it to deep into the postseason. Don't forget about the strides that they took on offense. Great freshman class with Bree Ellis. Nelia Peralta had a big year. And of course, they still have Michaela Packer. I mean, this is a team that to me is poised to just take off this year. And I know that Mickey Dean is really excited about what's to come for them this season.
I agree. And Georgia brings back a lot of their offense that you might argue is maybe the best offense in the SEC coming back.
Yeah.
Cheap plug. Georgia will open the season at UCF Thursday night, 6 o'clock, ESPN Plus. So this voice will be heard on that telecast with Francesca Neo. Just listen. That's a pretty big game. That's a top 20 matchup, rematch from last year. But you're right. Georgia seems to be loaded and prime, and they always seem to make that run every other year. It seems like when you least expect. Arkansas and Alabama is interesting because they're both kind of young. A lot of new faces. Arkansas with their number 1 recruiting class coming in. Shanice Dels is back, but who's behind her pitching wise because Mary Haps graduated. Alabama returns Montana Fouts, who's the number 2 behind her, and they got questions offensive. I think those two are kind of interesting from a youth standpoint.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that they have had good freshman classes come in, of course. Like when you're Arkansas and Alabama now, like you're going to get really good recruiting classes every year. But Eric, think about this: like with Alabama, when they made it to the World Series a couple of years ago, their team looks so different now than the team that last played in the World Series. Besides Montana Fouts, it's like almost. I'm not an Alabama specialist here, but I feel like almost every position is different because you don't have Kaylee Tao anymore. You have Allie Shipman back behind like it just is like a little different now, right? So I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I'm just saying that's a thing. Like from the last time that they went to the World Series, they don't have a very similar lineup, but they still have Allie Shipman and Montana Fouts is that battery that can anchor them. And so you know that Alabama is going to be strong because they have those two in the circle and back behind the plate, and that's always going to be helpful.
And then you got LSU and Tennessee, two kind of veteran teams, especially LSU. They return a lot of players back. High expectations there. And then Tennessee, it's always, what is Ashley Rogers' health? I feel like if she's healthy, they can make a deep run. But if she's not, it's kind of been how their seasons ended, been 2 regional losses. I think those two teams are kind of like, ooh, you kind of want to embrace it, but you kind of want to wait and see. But they have a lot of talent there. I mean, Taylor Pleasant is back, which is I feel like her and Georgia Clark have been there 100 years, but there they are. They're back leading this veteran team for LSU.
Yeah, I they're gonna be young. I'm very curious to see. Taylor Pleasance is like a Charlotte Eccles to me. Like she has the ability to be a National Player of the Year type candidate or SEC Player of the Year candidate because I just love her swing from the left hand side and just the ground that she can cover with her length at shortstop. But I think that Tennessee is going to be very interesting. I mean, I love watching Kiki Malloy play. I'm so happy that we get another chance to watch her this year because she hasn't graduated yet. And you're right about Ashley Rogers. I think that when Ashley Rogers is healthy, she's one of the best pitchers in the country. We've seen her do it. She's been there for a really long time. It's just always we don't know how healthy she will end up being and for how deep into the season. When she's healthy, to me, she can beat anybody. When she's not able to be there for that Tennessee team, then you can tell that she's a bit of a missing void. So if she can stay healthy, I feel like this is a very, very talented Tennessee team. And looking at their roster right now, super cool. They have a pitcher from Australia who is a freshman on their team. So that's always fun to see a player from
International.
Australia. Yeah.
Going international with Coach Weekly there and Megan Rhodes-Smith, their pitching coach. So we'll see how Tennessee LSU look like. Out west, you mentioned UCLA earlier. They bring back a lot of talent. Megan Faremo in the circle. Obviously, their offensive talent they have coming back. They've added pieces like Mionyo and Charlize Palacios from Arizona, which is still kind of weird to say, but that's the new life in college athletics now. There's movement. And Brooke Giannis, the Oregon ace who didn't pitch last year due to injury. What is that like? As somebody who had to deal with injuries and you have a long layoff, is that a mental challenge, a physical challenge for a pitcher that have been not having live competition against other opponents, or is that overblown?
I feel like every pitcher is going to handle it just so differently. And, I've never missed an entire year and then had to come back. I've missed, a weekend or a regional or something and then had to come back. Or my senior year, I was just out for the whole thing. So I did never come back. But yeah, I'm interested in that too, because Brooke Yanez, thinking about her career at Oregon and even playing against UCLA and the success that she had against them when she was wearing a Ducks uniform, she's really good. And I think that she adds a lot to UCLA because we know that Megan Framo is the real deal. She's been the real deal since she set foot on campus and she's gotten better and better every year and become a bigger leader for UCLA. And when we talk about who is the best pitcher in the country, Megan Framo has to be in that conversation. And so when you add somebody like Brooke Yanez, who comes from the left-hand side, more of a spinny type pitcher, gives a different look. I mean, that really gives UCLA instant depth in their circle. And how cool that Brooke Yanez, I'm sure, thinks, man, I get to learn from Lisa Fernandez as my pitching coach every single day. And of course, she has a good pedigree learning from Missy Lombardi at Oregon. So Brooke Yanez is a great pitcher, but UCLA getting those 4 big time transfers with Palacios and Mayonio and Rachel Sid as well
Yeah.
from Oregon. This team is going to look a little different because of graduation and a big freshman class and those transfers, but I think they're going to be really talented and Faremo can really anchor them in the circle.
Interesting to see who challenges them. The Pac-12 had a great postseason last year. Oregon State made it all the way to the World Series. You had obviously Arizona making it to the World Series, Stanford making it to a super regional. UCLA obviously made it to the World Series. What's your thoughts on the Pac-12? Because they felt they had a chip on their shoulder. They felt they weren't getting respect. They kind of want to make a statement. They did in the postseason. But I'm wondering who can challenge UCLA in the Pac-12 this year? Because you have Washington with no Gabby playing. She's graduated, so they got to figure out who their number one is. Arizona State has a new head coach, Megan Bartlett, with Trisha Ford moving on to Texas A&M, which we haven't touched on yet. Arizona loses some pieces. What's your thoughts on the Pac-12?
To me, just initially, I think that it's UCLA and everybody else. I think that that's to me the Pac-12 with Stanford even and Oregon. I think they're going to hit better. And Arizona coming off of a World Series appearance, and Washington being Washington, they'll still be strong, right? But to me, that's just about how good UCLA seems like they're going to be entering this season. I think that Stanford, quietly had such a strong year last year. It was online researching and, they beat Oklahoma State, UCLA, Arizona State last year. They had some marquee wins and they returned Elena Vaughter and Reagan Krause for a good pitching duo. And I think that this is a team that is highly revolves around pitching and defense. And I think that experience, I'm big on experience if you can't tell, but the experience that they gained in Tuscaloosa last year and beating Alabama twice is Could give them a lot of confidence coming into last year. Like, hey, let's pick up where we left off. Let's not just make it to the super, but win it. And they have that experience and confidence that will help them. And yeah, I think that Oregon, second year that they'll be with Sam Marter, their hitting coach, they hit more home runs last year than they did the year before that she got there. I think that this is an offense that I'm hearing a lot of talk about how their offense is going to be improved. So look for that. If they can continue to build and hit even more home runs than they hit last year. But fresh faces in the circle. Oregon has a couple of transfer pitchers, plus Stevie Hansen, who she was a freshman last year. She had really good moments. I saw her in person when Oregon was playing Arizona State, and Stevie Hansen had really great break. Just really talented pitcher. So hopefully for Missy Lombardi and company that Stevie Hansen can continue to build off of what she did last year and make that pitching staff deeper with a couple of transfers.
I'm with you. I'm on the Stanford bandwagon. I spoke to Jessica Allister. I've never talked to her on the being so confident, excited about her group. She just feels really good about the group. You mentioned when she returns 1-2 punch in the circle, and I think she knows if that offense could take that next step, and they've been building towards it, they can get to OKC. I think they got a taste of that hosting that super regional. They ran into Mariah Mazone, and Oregon State was playing hot. But I agree with. I think Stanford's the team to watch as a sleeper. I'm with you, and Allister's done a heck of a job there.
Well, and they have a freshman hitter pitcher who they've added who's supposed to be really good too. So it makes their pitching staff deeper and maybe adds a little bit of offense too. I love those pitchers that can swing it for themselves too. That's great.
Might get Mendoza and Ramona Shelbourne at OKC if make the trip. That's gonna be the big question there. Holy smokes. The Pac-12. ACC. You and I were super high on the ACC last year, and they had an incredible year, but surprisingly didn't get a team into Oklahoma City. I think you and I both felt they at least would get one, maybe two teams in. Florida State was the shocker. They were, I think, going into the tournament, the second best team. They're the number 2 seats. A lot of people thought they were maybe the big threat to Oklahoma. They were upset by Mississippi State at the regionals at home. Vot Tech lost to Florida in the supers. Clemson won their first regional before running into Oklahoma State. What's your thoughts on the ACC? I think there's a chip in talking to the ACC coaches. They know that and talking to the coaches, the next step for this league to get that extra respect is to have somebody other than Florida State represent the conference in the World Series. And by the way, FSU's got a chip on the shoulder. They remember that regional loss and they bring a lot back. What's your thoughts on the ACC?
So much. I'm just so excited about all these conferences. I can't wait to get started. But I did think that Virginia Tech was going to make it last year with Keela Rochard. Like I really thought, especially with them being able to host a regional and super regional for the first time in school history, and have her in the circle, I thought they were going to make it to OKC. And Florida was like, nope, not if we have anything to do with it. So that was a great super regional last year. I think that this is a conference that will just continue to grow. So many firsts last season. I mentioned Virginia Tech, but also Duke and Clemson making it to super regionals for the first time. So we'll see if there can be some more firsts. Like, can Notre Dame finally make it to a super regional? And how are they going to be? Of course, Karina Gaskins is going to return for Notre Dame. But I think that the real question, other than the teams that we know about, Florida State, Virginia Tech, Duke, and Clemson, to me, are up at the top. I think who else can give this conference some length? Is it going to be Georgia Tech? Is it going to be Louisville? Or is it going to be even somebody like Virginia that doesn't get talked about a lot? But Virginia had a solid year last year. They had 28 wins, the most wins since they had in a while. And they have a deeper pitching staff, got a transfer from UNLV. So to me, I feel like the ACC has some really good things going. We know that there's a really great top that will continue to at least knock on the door of the Women's College World Series. But I do think you're right. Like, who is going to be, besides FSU, the next ACC team to make it to the Women's College World Series? I think that's the next step for them right now. And Florida State, Eric, we haven't talked a lot about them, but I think that they're going to be really, really, really good.
Yeah, they got Sander Cock back. They added Allison Royalty from ASU in the pitch. It's funny. I was talking to Alani on the show. It's unique because normally she's got her experience pitching and it's the offense they're trying to replace pieces. They got pretty much their offense back and they are really excited. It's really the pitching that she's like jokes about. She's kind of constantly questioning. The head coach is talking to the pitching coach, everybody stuff, saying, how's that pitching coming along? Because they really love their offense and what they have coming back, even though they lose Sydney Sherrill, but they really are excited what they have back.
I think there's a lot to love about their pitchers too. So I don't know if that's like some kind of inside joke or what, but I mean, when you have Kat Sandercock as your ace on your staff, who again, when we're talking about who's the best pitcher in the country, she's going to be in that conversation. Like you should be feeling really good about yourself. And I think that Mac Leonard, who was new to their team last year, remember she's a hitter too, and she pitches. Like I think she got some valuable time playing in the ACC, both as a hitter and time in the circle that will only make her better this year. And you mentioned Allison Royalty, who pitched a lot for Trisha Ford at Arizona State in the Pac-12. So she's going to be experienced already and add depth to that staff. And we can't forget about Allie Dubois, who redshirted last year, came from Boston University, had a tremendous career there. So you have Sandercock, Dubois, Royalty, and Leonard. And I'm sure there's some people that I'm missing too to make that staff even deeper. But those four alone can win you some games. And they have won games, a lot of games in the past. So I can't wait to see how that pitching staff pans out and Allie Dubois getting a chance to play games at Florida State for the first time.
Yeah, with an offense that they really feel excited. They think it might
Yes.
be their best offense they've had in a few years because they got everybody pretty much nucleus there back.
Well, and
Clemson,
the
yeah,
infield, the
the
infield is
infield,
so strong
yeah.
for Florida State. The Flaherty, Enfield back behind the plate, Muffley, and I know I'm missing some people, but it's like they have such a good core group on the dirt that's going to make it tough.
You saw Clemson in the supers. And they've kind of been building for this. 2 years ago they made the tournament. Last year they hosted, they won a regional, ran into Oklahoma State, which is the super regional you called. With Cagle and Millie Thompson, they're 1-2 punch circle. I know in talking to John Rittman, they feel this is the next step for them, is that they're gaining experience every year from this. And maybe the next step for them is the World Series. I kind of like them a little bit as the second best team over Virginia Tech that's got to replace Keely Richard and Duke, which lost a lot from last year. They're young, talented, but young. I think Clemson could be the strong candidate maybe to be that second ACC team to make a run to OKC.
Very interesting. Yeah, because you do feel like Florida State is up at the top, but then it's like between Duke, Virginia Tech, and Clemson is like who is the second best team? And I mean, the way that Clemson, their trajectory ever since they formed their program and the buzz and momentum and adding more seats at their stadium and the crowds that they get, like Clemson truly is something special in our sport right now. And you're right. I mean, we can just say, okay, well, they made it to supers last year. Like, obviously, they're just going to make it to the World Series last year because their trajectory that they're on, like, you would assume that that's just the next step. And I'm interested to see, how they build because now they're not just the quiet underdog anymore. Like, once you make it to a super regional and make it to that level, you start to have a bigger bullseye on you. And so, how is Cagle going to take the expectations again, put on her of just having massive years in the circle and also up at the plate? Seemed like she had a few little, health issues and still pitched a lot of innings the past couple of years. Is she 100% healthy for them for this year coming in? Because I love to watch her pitch. I love to watch Valerie Cagle pitch, and the fact that she can swing it too from the left-hand side, a thing of beauty. And then Millie Thompson had a breakout year for them in the circle. Lefty, more of a spinner, had a tremendous changeup. I love what she brought to the team. And then Mackenzie Clark, Eric. This is a player I love to watch her play. She is one of the best athletes in our sport. So when you get a chance to watch Clemson, check out Mackenzie Clark. She is a tremendous player, and I love what she brings to Clemson and to the ACC.
I can't wait. And they have a great facilities there. They host Florida State. That could be a big series for them there as far as trying to win the ACC again there. So that's going to be fun, the ACC, which, again, it's become a power league. But I know in talking to the coaches, that next step now is Florida State's proven. We got to prove everybody else that we can join that party up in OKC like Northwestern did last year from the Big Ten. And I kind of feel like their coming out party was that weekend in Clearwater, week 2 last year when they beat UCLA in that dramatic walk-off, had a great weekend there. And I thought that was when they took off. And they bring everybody back, basically, Kate Drohan, for the most part, including Danielle Williams. They're the clear favorites in the Big Ten. What's your thoughts on the Wildcats?
Yeah, I think that they'll look to pick up right where they left off last year. And I think that Danielle Williams, the fact that, she's back and didn't graduate, that she still has another year, is going to help them bring that consistency to this year. Rachel Lewis to graduate, who had a tremendous career at Northwestern, but of course, they bring back Jordan Rudd, who's a big name, Maeve Nelson, and Skylar Shellmeyer. And one thing that to point out is that the last time that Northwestern went to the World Series, over a decade ago, back in like '06, '07, they did it back-to-back years when Eileen Canning and Garland Cooper were on the team. So can they do that again? But I think that this is a team that returns a lot. I think that they look pretty poised when you look at the other teams in the Big Ten, that they should be at the top and be the Big Ten champions. Of course, we have a lot of ball to play, but with what Northwestern brings back and the experience that they gained last year and just motivation to try to get back to OKC, then I think that they're going to be tough.
How strange is it going to be when you see Michigan there and Hutch is not in the dugout?
It's going to be so weird, but I think that for sure feels weird. But when I think about what Michigan lost in total, that's they lost Carol Hutchins as their head coach, and of course they still have a good coaching staff with Jen Brundage and Bonnie Thole taking over as head coach and adding Chittister to their staff too. But not only did they lose Hutch, but they lost Alex Storako and Megan Bobian, who feels like they were just a nucleus of Michigan softball for the past however many years. So to not have those three faces back in the dugout will just in itself have Michigan have this completely different feel and almost like a new era of Michigan softball that's approaching us.
They lose Hannah Carson, their catcher, who's at LSU now, as well. So that's you're right. Michigan's young, very young, but maybe that gives them a chip on their shoulder because people are maybe kind of dismissing them. So you never know with Michigan. There, Nebraska maybe is the big threat there. They had a great year last year. Rhonda Revelle and company there. I'm trying to think of who else could challenge, maybe make some noise in the Big Ten. Had a 7-bid league last year from the Big Ten. Wisconsin made a lot of noise. I remember last year in Clearwater, and really that carried in with Maddie Schwartz and company. I don't know who. Big Ten will be interesting. Who could challenge Northwestern?
Yeah, I think the teams that you named, Wisconsin, Nebraska, I'd also throw in Illinois with
Yeah.
Cindy Sickles and Tori McQueen and Lauren Wiles. They had a very good pitching staff, although their pitching coach, Lance McMahon, is now at Alabama because Stephanie Van Brakel Prothro, who was an Alabama graduate, Alabama pitching coach, is now the head coach at Memphis. So we'll see how Illinois' pitching staff is able to recover or pick up from where they left off last year. And they always fight. I love to, Tyra Perry, Illinois' head coach. But yeah, Nebraska, their offense kind of stepped up last year, huh? High slugging percentage, and Billy Andrews, who hit like 20 home runs, and Maya Felder, who was a transfer from Oregon. Nebraska was a team that really emerged. We'd kind of forgotten about them in a way. And Nebraska, had some big wins and had some big stats to back it up too with their offensive stats. So interested to see how they go. And then Wisconsin, they're scrappy. They always surprise some people. You mentioned Maddie Schwartz, but somehow, Eric, Kayla Conwent is
Oh
still
yeah.
around. What a story for Kayla Conwent. If you don't know it, we'll talk about it in Clearwater because Wisconsin will be there, but she has been around forever. Former Big Ten Player of the Year, I believe, All-American, took a year off. Then there was a COVID year. I mean, she's just been around forever. I think she's like a super, super, super senior, and I need to get all the facts down, but she's still around. Kayla Conwent is an awesome story from the minute that she set foot at Wisconsin to the fact that she's still now playing. So definitely follow her and check her out.
Every year now, we get a team from the non-Power 5 that will make noise in the postseason. 2 years ago, James Madison made the run to the World Series. Last year, UCF hosted, won a regional, and many felt like if they didn't have Oklahoma in their draw, they could have been to OKC. You saw them really, one of their turning points when they came from behind in that wild game against Texas in Clearwater. Who do you think is this year's UCF or JMU? Who do you like from the non-Power 5 that you think will make some noise this year?
I think Wichita State continues to make a lot of noise. I think that Texas State with Jessica Mullins in the circle, love the way that she pitches, highly regarded pitcher for them, and always a competitive team with Ricky Woodard as their head coach. And I also think of North Texas. I think that that's a team that made it to regionals and turned some heads, super competitive. I know that Kat called that regional and really had a lot of great things to say calling that regional about North Texas and Ronnie DeLong and their coaching staff and just the competitive nature that they're continuing to build in that program and get good recruits. Skylar Savage, one of their pitchers, I know turn Cat's Head as well in that regional. And so I think that that could be another team to watch out for.
Yeah, I agree. North Texas got a lot, returning a lot of momentum. Wichita State, Sydney McKinney, Addison Barnard, maybe two of the best players people
Yeah.
may not know about that might be the two best players in the non-power five. Jada Cody, UCF, you've seen that's another name to bring
Yeah.
up. UCF, the big question is the pitching. They're young in the circle, kind of like Wichita State. South Florida, no Georgina Corrick. So the Americans kind of unique from that standpoint because of the youth and the pitching there. I like the Cajuns too. Jerry Glasgow and company bring back a lot, and I can't wait for that Texas State Louisiana showdown in the Sun Belt.
It's always so good. And Jordan Campbell is a great player for Louisiana too. And I feel like, I don't know if it just feels like it's me, Eric, but it seems like Louisiana has been a little quiet for the past couple of years. Like we're used to seeing them in super, we're used to seeing them at the Women's College World Series and being that quote unquote mid-major team that, is able to make it there. But I don't know. Like I just feel like there's still a good team and they have so much potential. And are they able to play up to that potential this year and play to their best at the right time, stay healthy, and be able to make it deep into the postseason like they used to, like we're used to seeing Louisiana do?
Right. I think part of the key is maybe to host a regional. Going on the road, it's hard to win
Yes,
a regional in today's day and age. That's probably hurt them a little bit. I mean, UCF benefited from that hosting last year and was
huge.
able to host. So I think that's the key remedy, for them is to host because otherwise they're going to be traveling to a tough regional like last year, Clemson or usually LSU. So, but I agree with you. And then Texas State, boy, they got a lot. They got a nice little window there. Ricky Woodard really loves that nucleus they have there at Texas State. You mentioned Mullins. That might be one of the best, maybe the best mid-major pitcher out there. Maybe the heir apparent to Georgina Corrick's reigns there. We'll see how the season plays out. Couple other not items before we let you go. Trisha Ford now at Texas A&M. You got Megan Bartlett, who you covered at the World Series at Texas, now the new head coach at Arizona State. Your old teammate, Sharonda McDonald at Michigan State. Your old coach, Joe Evans, now out west. This was like a 6 degrees of Scarborough offseason. I don't know what's going on. Give me what are some of the coaching moves that caught your thoughts on those moves, and maybe any other moves that caught your eye this offseason you think will make to look for?
Yeah, I'm trying to think about them all, but you had, a few coaches, even Jackie Joseph and Joe Evans and
Yeah.
Carol Hutchins. I mean, you think about just them not being as the head coach at Michigan State and Michigan and then Texas A&M. I mean, those are some big shifts and some big programs. So, of course, I fully support Michigan State and Sharon McDonald taking over there. One of my old teammates, she was in my wedding, and also one of my old roommates. And then yeah, Trisha Ford coming over to A&M. It's big. I have been around the program. I've been to their clinics and or their camps that they've put on, or just stopped by the program and said hi a couple of times. And she's really big on involving the alumni and keeping them involved and around and getting their opinion and just staying connected, which has been really cool. But a lot of good energy. She's so competitive, really personable. So it's been fun to get to know her and see her and her staff that are all really great people at Texas A&M. And it's been definitely different without having Coach Evans there, right? She's been there for so long, but Coach Evans being at UCSB now in Santa Barbara seems like a good fit, and her team is just speaking super highly of Coach Evans, of course, at UCSB.
You mentioned Van Braco earlier. That's a significant move because she leaves Alabama and then taking over the Memphis program. Lance McMahon, as a result, as you mentioned, goes to Alabama, and Van Studerman back in coaching now is at Illinois, a pitching coach.
That's
Uh,
right. How funny is that? That Lance McMahon went to Alabama, and I'm so happy that you just reminded me of that because I knew that, but one of those things I just forgot about for the moment. But you get an experienced pitching coach, and Van Studeman. I mean, she was so good as a pitching coach at Alabama, and then of course what she did with the pitchers at Mississippi State when she was the head coach. So you get a seasoned, quality pitching coach with Tyra Perry at Illinois to take Lance's spot for a really good pitching staff at Illinois to pick up.
Sydney Romero, now full-time assistant at Duke. adding to that Gasso tree, which keeps growing and growing every year. And Craig Snyder is the new head coach at Texas Tech, coming from the A&M staff. In fact, everybody at A&M is head coaches. Kara Dill is now a head coach at UTA. So that's kind of a unique, nice trivia there.
It really
It's kind of
is.
wild. Very seldom there. You obviously, I remember you at the World Series at the preview show. You actually had to talk about the Trisha Ford because that leaked out while you were at the World Series. What was that like for you? Because I'm sure once that hit, your phone exploded and everybody's asking you, what do you think? Right as you're in the middle of the World Series working.
Yeah, I mean, the World Series is always busy as it is, but when you're the an alum of a team that is getting a new coach after a coach that has, over 1,000 wins or however many Coach Evans had, 1,400, 1,500, a lot, and just had been there like a mainstay. Yeah, it was wild experience at the World Series, super close with Coach Evans, and just I attribute so much of my career and who I am today as a person to her, and just loved overall my experience of getting to play with her, and just the legacy that she left at Texas A&M will forever be remembered. And even though she's not going to be wearing maroon and have the uniform on or a shirt or out recruiting for A&M, she'll always be a part of the program. But um, here we are with Trisha Ford, and we'll see how it goes with a brand new head coach. And I'm full support of her. I love her. It's been great to get to know her.
They'll be a part of that Clearwater field week
Mhm.
2. Give me your quick thoughts on that tournament? Because I know that's what you're eyeing on. That's when we're going to see you there. What are you looking forward to the most seeing that tournament? Obviously, it's another loaded field, so it goes without saying. But there's some intriguing storylines. Trisha Ford being one of them. There, that'll be the first time that the national audience will see Texas A&M with Coach Ford. They're one of many storylines there.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the very first game, it's A&M versus Oklahoma State, 10 a.m. on Thursday, February 16th. Of course, people are probably wondering where Julia Cottrell went, who was a great player at Florida and then Oklahoma State, and she actually ended up at Texas A&M. So her first game with her new team will get
Wow.
to be against her old team, which is kind of funny. Always interesting to see how UCLA plays early in the season. UCLA and Alabama play against each other, and UCLA also will play Virginia Tech, which will be a great game. Just going through the schedule, like an Arkansas Duke matchup is definitely one of intrigue. Alabama and UCLA, that would be a really good one. Like two teams that have won a national championship before. Anytime they go up against each other, that's always fun to watch. Um, who else do we have here? Arizona versus Virginia Tech. I love that matchup. Alabama versus UCF. That'll be a great one. I mean, there are just some pretty heavyweight type matchups that will be capped on Sunday night. We'll have two games actually on TV. ESPN, ESPN2 will have Alabama, Florida State on ESPN, and then UCF, Mississippi State later that night on ESPN2. So that's a huge thing for the tournament because we've usually just had the one
Woo.
game on Sunday night, and we get two games that will be really good games to cap things off.
That's what the people want. Demand, a lot of demand there, viewership there. We won't discuss UCF and A&M because that's gonna be our bragging rights. I'm gonna be doubled up. It's you and Low Price against me for that game. That's gonna be a fun game. I'm looking forward to that. Seeing that matchup there. All right. That's going to be a fun tournament, folks. ESPN family of networks, by the way, will have the entire Clearwater tournament. Make sure you find those details. Amanda's going to be everywhere during that weekend. Everywhere. Like, if I'm lucky, I'll get to say a wave high, and that'll be it. When I
It's a busy weekend. I think I have 9 games. I think Danielle Laurie said she has 11. I mean, we're
Woo.
all just trying to get to the end, but loving every second of it along the way.
Listen, we
Because you
have
know what?
yeah.
Usually in that weekend, there are such good games. There's a comeback. There's a team that plays really bad. There's a team that plays really well. There's a team that beat a team that they've never beaten before ever. So it's like there's always such good games. I talked about some kind of marquee matchups, but like all the teams that are here, Michigan, A&M, UCF, UCLA, USF, Florida State, Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, Louisiana, Indiana, Oklahoma State, like it's Mississippi State, one after another that are just like quality teams. And so it makes for really good games early on.
That'll be a fun weekend. My last question to you, I will give you the platform here. Give me some bold predictions you got here. It could be anything.
Oh,
It could be teams you think will make it to Oklahoma City. If you want to go the direction of Player of the Year, whatever anything you want. Any bold prediction. I'm not gonna say, hey, what's your teams for the World Series? Because everybody's gonna ask you that. And I know you like to see some games before even making that final decision. But I know you've got some some thoughts already in your head. So give me some Scarborough bold picks here, some picks there that we'll look back in May and either play it over and say, "Wow, that was incredible," or we'll delete it this part of the
Yeah,
show and
it's
never
either one
delete
or
it.
the other.
Yeah.
How about that Clemson makes it to the Women's College World Series? Kind of a bold prediction there. And Valerie Cagle going to be up for National Player of the Year. I think maybe she'll finish top 3. Super bold prediction. And then I don't know. I keep thinking about Georgia and Auburn. So let's have Georgia finishing top 3 in the SEC. I don't know if I can put myself out there. They're going to win it.
It's fine.
But I feel like finishing top 3 in the SEC almost feels like he won it. And that they will have a really good year. I think Georgia.
That'll get you a national host, maybe even the mix the top 8 hosts if they get to that point, and that could maybe pave the way for them to get to the World Series.
Yeah.
So that would be huge for them. I'm with you on Valerie Cagle, and I'm happy to hear that because I kind of feel like she's gotten underappreciated last year. Like she had a good year, but I feel like for some reason it just kind of went under the radar. You know, whatever reason. I kind of agree with it. I think Cagle is definitely a nice pick for Player of the Year. I have her on my pick as well for National Player of the Year, so I like that pick.
Because she can do both,
Yeah,
right? Like she
yeah.
can pitch and hit and do it at a very high level. Like she's just not like hidden in the lineup and maybe we'll hit like 250 and you'll get 5 home runs. Like she has the potential to hit 25 home runs, 20 home run, potential to do it. Like we'll see what happens, but also pitch with like a 1.5 or below ERA. So we'll see. Not to put too much pressure on her or anybody else because I've felt that as a player, but she has definitely the potential to do something like that.
Well, that's going to be exciting. We can't wait for the season. It's right here. It's going to get going. Amanda, one last time, tell the audience where they can find you, especially with Pitching Angel, and just follow you because you're going to be broadcasting a lot. People are going to be wondering what games you're doing.
Yeah.
I get asked that all the time, and I feel awkward when I always have to ask you, hey, people are asking me what games you're doing. What are you doing? So tell the
Yeah.
audience what's the easiest way to find you for all that information.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter too at A Scarborough, at Amanda Scarborough, also on Instagram. At Pitching Angel is more like pitching related type stuff. And those are probably my go-to for like college softballs type stuff. Twitter and Instagram, at A Scarborough, at Amanda Scarborough on Instagram.
Always a pleasure doing this. Is one of my favorite episodes of the year. Is just sitting down with you and talking softball all year round. And I know you have such a busy schedule, so I always appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and
Yeah.
talk to us on the show. Everybody appreciates it, and hope to cross paths in Clearwater, even if for a quick cameo hi during the
Yeah,
schedule there. Thanks for doing this.
for sure. Hope it lived up to the expectations that we've set now for the show.
It's a high standard
Thanks
of
for
the show
having
now.
me. Exactly.